Hi again, and welcome to the Talking Bass podcast. This week, I'll be talking bass with a huge voice in the world of YouTube and online bass education, Josh Fossgreen. Josh is the creator of the popular BassBuzz education platform. The YouTube channel is the starting point for most bass players looking for beginner bass lessons. The lessons are hugely entertaining with plenty of humor, graphical interest, and Josh's welcoming personality with all ego left well and truly at the door. Beyond the YouTube channel, BassBuzz also has a fantastic website which is home to his incredibly popular Beginner to Badass Bass course. Here, students can work through the course lessons and also interact with each other in the open BassBuzz forum. So without further ado, here's my YouTube bass bro, Josh Fossgreen. Hiya, Josh.
Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
Good. Good to talk to you finally. We've been email buddies for like almost 10 years.
Yeah. Every time, obviously we've got the same audience pretty much. And the number of times that you come up in conversation, you know, especially BassBuzz, you know, Josh, etc. But we've never actually spoke in, not in the flat. This isn't in the flesh, is it?
This is digital flesh.
Virtually, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, how did you get started? So, forget BassBuzz for now. Let's go right back. So, So when did you start playing?
I started playing bass, I think I was 13. It was like right before I started high school. And it's so funny. I don't remember. I wish I had a cool story of like, I was climbing on the mountain and the wizard told me or something, but it's just like, I honestly don't know why that's the moment I started. My dad's a bass player, so I was definitely exposed to it.
That's
and
a good start.
It was not hard to start playing bass, but I don't know why that was the moment. Maybe I wanted to have something to show off with as I was hitting puberty and being interested in girls and stuff. But that's just when I started. And
what year was that?
Let's see. That I'm 33 now, so that would have been 20 years ago. So I've been playing about 20 years. Yeah, and I was just so fired up about it. And again, I don't know why, but I was just like, bass is the coolest thing ever. Like, I'm going to bring my bass to school with me every day just so those 3 minutes between classes, I can like pull it out and go slappity slap. And it was just like endless. I just couldn't stop.
So what were you into right at the start?
Oh, that's a good question. I remember the first few songs I learned. I actually talked about this in a BassBuzz video a while back. But the first song I ever played was Hit the Road Jack, Ray Charles, just like a simplified version. And then it was like the Ramones and ZZ Top and just like stuff that just goes rim bim 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 because that was a good way to like get the plucking hand going. And I was listening to a lot of stuff that I couldn't really play at the time, like System of a Down and Metallica and Megadeth and all that classic metal and stuff, and just like good high school music, but I don't think I actually learned it. And I got to play in a ska band, I think, when I was 15. So I'd been playing for a couple of years, and that was my first real gig. So I was wearing Vans and a tie and a black shirt, and we had the horns and people skanking, and that was fun.
Yeah, I love playing in ska bands. So there was one that I used to play in that years and years ago, probably about that time, actually. And, that was the most fun I think I've ever had in a band. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really into Matt Freeman from Rancid, and so I was already into really chopsy playing, so I was just playing like way too many notes. Like, yeah, I have some recordings from that time, and I'm just like constantly playing fills and just all the stuff that you learn not to do when you're not 15.
Yeah, I bet. When you listen back to, if you've ever got recordings of when you're first starting out, it's good to listen back to because then you can see how much you've progressed, I suppose.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, because you always think you're killing it. And then a couple years later, you're like, oh, wow, that's what I thought was killing it. Now I can like discern all these ways that I've improved. And then it happens again and again and again.
Did you go to music college?
Technically, I went to like a community college here in the San Francisco Bay Area where I grew up. And I did the equivalent of like an undergrad music program. So 4 or 5 semesters of like theory and ear training and that kind of stuff. But I'm a college dropout. I hit a point where I was like, okay, I could transfer to music school, or I could just keep gigging and teaching like I'm already doing. And I opted to do that, which I think had benefits of I don't have student loan debt, and and all that. But also I kind of missed out on the like networking experience of going to like a big music school like Berkeley or somewhere in LA or something like that.
So when you start out, because I mean, you've got a pretty diverse array of, like, let's say, bass skills. The walking bass, and you can play all the sort of classical kind of stuff, and blah, 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 blah. How did you make the transition from playing a lot of stuff like Rancid and, you know, Metallica and Iron Maiden and things like that? Because that's how I started. You know, I was playing Megadeth, Pantera, all those kind of things in, you know, in a garage band, and the only thing that, personally, I mean, the way that I transitioned into a lot of, let's say, more jazzy things and stuff like that was probably when I went to music college, because then I was exposed to it, and I'd have probably found it quite difficult to move into it if I'd not. It'd have been really tricky, but you've obviously got a lot of those things down as well. So how did you make that transition into that stuff? Were you just into it?
I think I've always had pretty diverse interests. Like I think my parents for that. They're both musicians, and I grew up listening to just all kinds of stuff. I was like jamming to Mozart when I was 5, and then there's like home videos where we're listening to Erykah Badu at Christmas and James Taylor, and my mom loves Dexter Gordon. She's a sax player, and I hated jazz when I was a kid, though. I remember being in the car. My mom's told me the story. She'd like put on jazz and it'd be like, no jazz. I don't know why. I love Dexter Gordon now, but yeah, I never felt like I'm a rock musician or I'm a punk musician, or I was just excited about music. I was playing in a around when I did that ska band, I also was in a rehearsal, just like a rehearsal band that never really gigged, but doing like Motown and funk and soul and stuff. And yeah, I've just always kind of been all over the place. Which I love because I love all these kinds of music, and also has kind of led to a lot of like imposter syndrome and feeling like a faker. Because like I've done a bazillion jazz gigs, but a lot of the time that's not what I'm listening to. I'm listening to whatever, the last Mark Juliana record, or listening to the Chili Peppers once again. So yeah, it's interesting.
I think a lot of people feel like that, though. I mean, I certainly feel like that a lot of the time, because I kind of feel like when it's not something that you listen to all the time, you know, there's some people that will just, they are jazz musicians. They absolutely love jazz, and that is all they want to play. And that. And you know, that's not me. I love loads of jazz, and I play, like you say, I've done loads and loads of jazz gigs. Obviously, I had to do it at college, blah, blah, blah. But it's not my first love. But then again, I kind of feel like a bit of a journeyman in that sense. I've always kind of, you know, take whatever kind of gig, you know, whatever it is, playing in all different styles. But I think because of that, you can end up feeling that imposter syndrome, because then you play with like some real hardcore jazz guys, and you think, oh, I'm not one of these really hardcore jazz guys. Even though you might be doing a decent job.
Dead in the water,
Yeah, certainly with Latin. If I ever have to play the Latin stuff, I'm like, man, I'm just not. I just feel like I'm faking everything all the time. I mean, I feel like I'm faking everything all the time. So
totally, yeah. Latin in particular, I feel that too. And you know, like you, I'm sure I've done a lot of like Latin jazz, because there's that crossover. So it's like cool. Like if we're doing bossa nova on a jazz gig, like I can handle it. But like an actual Latin gig is just like, don't call. Not that anybody's calling me, but if they did, I would be like, call my friend anyway, you can do this. My uncle is a bass player who also lives in the UK, actually, and he has a story. Decades ago, he was on a Latin gig, and you know, tunes will, like, the clave will flip part way through the tune, and he didn't make the transition, apparently. And the story is, one of the guys pulled a knife on him. It was just like, I'll leave the obscenity out, but it was just like, how dare you mess up the rhythm on this tune. So I heard that story when I was young, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna. I have the Oscar Stagnero Latin bass book that Chuck Sure published, but I'm not gonna try to get the gig.
Yeah, they're definitely high stakes. Yeah, Jeff Berlin said exactly the same thing, and when I was interviewing him, he was talking about doing Latin gigs, and you'd think, I mean, with dudes like that, you know, you think, oh, they're just authentic everything, and you know, he said exactly the same thing. He was doing Latin gigs, and they'd be calling him out on it, and I suppose that's what gets you better at these things, you know. But
yeah, as long as nobody stabs you, you can learn from the experience.
I know. Yeah, that's a bit hardcore, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, but yeah. So you were doing all this stuff, and then you made the move into YouTube, and so did you say that was about 2010, something like that?
That was the very beginning of it. So I'd been teaching like one-on-one private lessons for a few years. Like I started teaching when I was still a teenager, which may have been ill-advised, but it's what I did. And I remember the first lessons I taught, like they were not good, but that's part of how you learn. So I'd been working with private students for a few years, and I actually started my YouTube channel because I was really into like solo bass stuff at the time. I was just like trying to be Victor Wooten. Um, and so somebody helped me like record a few performances, and I just like wanted to put them on YouTube. So they're there as a, if I wanted to get a gig, I could like put up the video or whatever. And I think I just made a bass lesson or two as kind of an afterthought, and a couple of them got like a few thousand views or something, which at the time I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I remember I did a video about the Mark King slap triplet thing about called like how to sound good at slap bass or something, and it like got a lot of views at the time. And yeah, I just got kind of excited about it and wanted to keep trying it. And then it was just like so on and off over the years as like things happened in my life, and there are just like big gaps on the Josh Fossgreen channel where there's like no video for years. And yeah.
Yeah, that slap thing, that'll always do the trick, won't it? I remember that was the first thing that I got as well. It was like I'd done some music theory lessons and stuff. I was just trying to get some Skype students, to be honest. I was just putting it out there about me.
Yeah,
playing.
that was the other thing for me too.
Yeah, because it's a good way of getting, because you can't rely just on people in the local area, So I thought, I'll get some Skype students, and there I am putting up these theory things, and then of course I did exactly the same thing, doing Mark King slap triplets and stuff, and I'm watching it go up 1,000 views, 2,000 views, 3,000. I'm like, I'd only had like a couple of hundred views, and then it just, and that'll always do the trick. It wouldn't now because it's saturated with them, but back then it was.
That's so funny. Animal. I didn't know you had a video on that same thing, and it also blew you up. That's so cool.
Yeah, that was it. That was the one. I don't think it got. I mean, it's gone up a lot now, but I mean, it was. But back then, I mean, I think it got to about 10,000 views or 12,000 views or something like that, which of course back then was like a
huge
lot
at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just that, and I think it were putting Mark King in the in the title or something like that. I felt really bad as well because he only lives about a mile away. I'm on the Isle of Wight, so he lives just down the road. And I've met him a few times, not here, ironically, just at trade shows and things. But I felt bad because every time for a few years, the only thing that came up if you put Mark King bass was this damned video that I'd done. And I just, you talk about imposter syndrome. I was like, oh man, that's me. Yeah. So then, so that was the Josh Fossgreen channel. So that was, you had that working for quite a while. So when did BassBuzz? When did you make the transition to that?
That started in I think 2016 is when I made and put out the Beginner to Badass course, which is still the only course I've actually put out with BassBuzz. And so put out the course, and it was actually still a couple more years of just doing like sporadic YouTube on my own channel before I really started doing BassBuzz on YouTube consistently, and that was like 2019, I think, when those first videos started rolling out. And so yeah, that's been where I've kind of channeled all my bass lesson energy. Folks who followed me on my original channel will notice that I haven't posted in a really long time. It just felt good to kind of like start fresh and have a clear goal of like, what is this thing? BassBuzz is to help beginners feel badass and make music. And the Josh channel had always been such a hodgepodge of like cruise ship videos like you and I were talking about before we started recording, and performances and super advanced lessons that only like 2% of people would care about. And I just wanted to have a clearer like statement of like, this is what is happening here.
I hear about it all the time. I mean, I've not worked through it or anything, but
yeah, it's safe to say, Mark, that you don't need the course. I think I think you got it all covered.
Yeah, but I Yeah, I mean, everybody tells me about it, and there's a lot of people that come to Talking Bass that'll get my more, let's say, they're moving into, I don't know, some of the more not advanced, but the more focused sort of chord tone theory and all that kind of stuff that I'll do on some of the courses, and lots of them will have come from beginner to badass. So it seems to be the go-to, I think, now for beginner bass. I mean, I've got beginner stuff as well. Obviously, Scott has. There's a bunch of people, but I think for a certain type of, I mean, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of it's about who. With all of us, it's who you resonate with, isn't it? It's like
Totally.
you'll watch somebody, and then it's like right, that does it for me. And of course, your channel with all of there's a certain element of humor in it. There's a lot of, it really works for that beginner bass thing, and you've really got that down. So a lot of people talk about it, and so how big is it that the beginner to badass course in terms of the lesson, number of lessons, etc.
Yeah, it's about 100 lessons. I forget the exact count. But it's split up into like modules that each have, 5 to 7 lessons. And it's in total, I think it's like 35 hours of video or something. So it's pretty full on. Some people blast through it in a month, but a lot of times people take like 3 months or 6 months to work through it at their own pace. And yeah, it just starts at the absolute beginning of like, I assume that you have learned nothing and know nothing, not in a condescending way, but just like, I'm not going to throw terminology out that I haven't explained yet or assume that you already know how to do something. So it starts really slow. And at the same time, I try to get them in with like actually playing music as soon as possible rather than have a lot of preamble. And then it just builds up gradually and as smoothly as I could make it. And yeah, I try to, like we talked about, I'm really all over the place stylistically. So I tried to, that's kind of reflected in the course. Like they'll play a lot of rock, but they'll also play some funk, and they'll play a little tiny bit of jazz and some blues and a little bit of reggae. And yeah, I feel like it's our duty as teachers to expose students to music that maybe they haven't gotten into before, if only so they can just learn more about music. They don't have to fall in love with it necessarily. But yeah, I tried to include that in the course as well.
Yeah. And you've got there's a forum there as well, isn't there? I'm actually on the forum. I signed up to. I think you've seen me in there as well. Yeah, yeah. There's a few of those things that I signed up to. The reason I actually went over there is because somebody asked me. It was one of in fact, a couple of the members over there were saying, we've been talking about Talking Bass, and they were saying, you need to come over. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And I thought I'd had to have been a part of the course and stuff, but you can just sign up, can't you, onto the forum?
Yeah, totally. It's an open forum. It's a lot of people who've done the course, because we haven't really like pushed the forum at all. It's just kind of there. But it's a really sweet community. And also there's a thread that's pretty populated about like, okay, I finished beginner to badass. Like, what do I do now? And basically unanimously, it's like, go take Mark's courses.
I think I saw that one. I think that's the one that they all. I kept getting links to it, and of course I wasn't signed up, so it just kept going to the forum thing, So I thought, I better sign up. But everybody kept, 'cause obviously it's all the same. Like you say, it was people that had gone to Talking Bass, and so they just kept linking to it. I was like, "Oh right, here we go. Oh, this is nice." So that was cool.
Yeah. I know people really like doing your chord tones course in particular after beginner to badass, because I definitely cover theory in the course, but I don't give it a full blast in some ways. So I haven't taken your chord tones course, but it seems like it's a really nice place to step next after beginner to badass, and just getting the real basics of like major minor scales and triad arpeggios and stuff.
Yeah, that one, it gets quite. See, you do it right. I'm just a pain with these things because I get carried away. It's like yours is like, oh, okay, we've got the beginner thing, and we do all this, but like I start with the beginner thing on, like, let's say chord tone ascension, so it'll start with the real basics, but then I'm just a lunatic. I just keep going and going until it gets out of hand, and they just end up being too. I mean, people love it and stuff, and I'm not saying don't buy it, but it's
Well, I mean, that's part of what's fun about bass teachers, I think, is that we're so excited about bass that we want to get other people excited about it, and so we just tend to ramble. But yeah, with BassBuzz, I have intended to make myself like present a little more like clearly and specifically. But I still do the same thing with one-on-one students. I'll be like, oh, well, if we're talking about this, we should talk about this too. And then 5 minutes later,
I
I'm like,
know.
okay, so that was like 3 times more information than you needed. So just
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. We'll get back to the major triad now.
Yeah. It has really captured the beginner bass thing. I mean, the thing I think that you've done perfectly is just really focused on YouTube. I mean, I'm still, again, lunatic, just putting out completely different things. I mean, I ought to really be more niche driven, but you've really got that niche now. So it's like the beginner stuff is like, if you want beginner stuff, it's like the BassBuzz is doing it. And it's, but I mean, even I was talking to Scott Devine about this the other day. We were talking about that, about the beginner versus intermediate versus advanced and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like Scott, obviously, it's a different. Yeah, I mean, he covers a lot of different things. I mean, they've got interviews as well, but you wouldn't say that the SBL, let's say, channel or the academy are beginner focused. It's and I'm not beginner focused. I do beginner stuff. He does beginner stuff, but it's more varied, I suppose. We sort of like throw around all over the place, but you've really laser focused in on there, and I think that's probably, I mean, it's not a secret to success, but that I think that's why it's become so successful.
Yeah, it's been a really helpful limitation to, I have all kinds of, like, I want to teach like this really cool, crazy slap pattern that'll take you 3 months to figure out. But it's been helpful to have the limitation of like, that's not what BassBuzz is. So I can do that on my Josh channel, but BassBuzz is going to consistently be this thing. And part of that is because, there are other teachers. They're like, SBL has a bazillion cool courses with amazing teachers, and you've got so many courses and videos, and there's already a lot of stuff in the intermediate and advanced space. Yeah, I just felt like I wanted to work on beginner stuff from another angle. Because for me as a learner and as a musician, I've always been kind of a fast learner type person. Like, I'll just like get stuff. I was really ahead of the class in school. And when I got into bass, I just kind of like ran with it and played a billion hours a day. And I've learned over the years as a teacher to orient more towards people who don't connect to that self-image and maybe have identified as slow learners, or they had some crap music teacher when they were growing up who was like, you just don't have what it takes to blah de blah. And then 40 years later, they're like, crap, like I really want to play bass. And yeah, it's just become my mission to really like serve those people who maybe watch music lessons and get left in the dust a lot, because it's just like circle of fourths, blah de blah de blah. What are we talking about? So yeah, my intention with Beginner to Badass and with the YouTube videos is to really be like, anybody could follow this. Again, hopefully not in a condescending way, but just in a like, I'm going to be so clear that you're going to feel like, yeah, I really got it by the end of the video.
I think that's why a lot of our audience, why we have a shared audience, actually, because I think it's the one thing that we both, if I was to say what my strength, and I think it's your strength as well, is because of the lack of ego. It's providing those kind of aha moments. I see that mentioned a lot in comments and stuff like that, where people just get it because you're not condescending. You're presenting information that, let's face it, a lot of people could actually present even fairly basic musical concepts in a fairly advanced way. They just blind you with terminology and and all that stuff. And people don't want that, especially on YouTube. And so I think it seems that that's what we have in common, judging by what people say, that they can actually get some of those aha moments. And that's, especially for a beginner. I mean, I've always thought this, that, John Patitucci is not... browsing YouTube to look for bass lessons and stuff. Intermediate to advanced players are not going to be going to me, you, Scott, or any of those kind of people, because once you get to a certain level, you like you say, you run with it. So the majority of people that are watching YouTube are going to be more of a beginner standard. All right, fair enough. If you're trying to get into jazz soloing and stuff, you might sort of move around a little bit more. But those kind of people are probably going to be looking to the greats, like the John Patitucci's of this world.
Well, and that's where I feel like there's already so much great content. Like, I'll just speak for Scott's courses, and I've taken a few. Like, it's just when you're at like that advanced gigging level, to be able to learn from somebody who you like love their playing. Like, that's the exciting thing, I think. And so, I don't feel like I have as much to offer for that kind of person, because I also don't think of myself as like such an incredible player or like the height of bass playing. And so when people get to a certain level, I kind of just see them as peers we're all on this learning journey together. So I also feel like I have more to offer to beginners.
Yeah, I think also the bass, especially in this education space, the kind of YouTube thing and the online web kind of thing, it's got a pretty nice community. I mean, even though we've not properly met yet, everybody's pretty good with each other on the whole. There's like some people aren't. I know a few names, but like me. I mean, me and Scott have known each other since way back. We're from the same place. Back in the mid '90s, I've known him since all the way back there. But even so, it's like everybody gets on pretty well, and I quite like talking to all the different people that are in this space, and everybody, kind of bigs up each other to some extent as well. So it's a pretty nice community, and I think a lot of the people, a lot of the viewers, they kind of like that as well, because the last thing they want is a load of, the Jake Paul style, just like a lot of people just going at each other, YouTube-based boxing community.
I mean, we could probably get some more views, Mark, if we had a fake feud.
Yeah, probably.
Like white background versus black background.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I think, because I did a video about, I think you saw it. It was like, we're going back probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I think it was during COVID, the main lockdown time. And I did the top 20 bass education channels, which I suppose some people might say, "Oh, what you doing? You're talking about all the other people on there." But I kind of like all that, and it was like, I mentioned you, and there was Scott, and blah, 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 blah. And the comments from everybody, they were all so happy because we were all there on this one thing.
Yeah, well, the reality is, like, I think if we as creators get in a competitive mindset, it's easy to think like, well, I have to grab everyone or else Mark's going to get them or whatever. Not that I actually think that, but the reality is, like, people are probably following multiple teachers, and like they'll watch BassBuzz and then they'll watch your videos and they'll watch Derek Bennett, who's such a great player. Yeah, I'm like embarrassed that I teach slap every time I hear him slap in videos. Like, this guy slays. But yeah, like there's room for people to learn from multiple teachers, and I think that's better that they don't only hear from one voice.
Yeah, Derek Bennett's amazing. I met him at NAMM a couple of years ago, and I was dead surprised that he was so tall. I mean, he's not because you're really tall, aren't you? I didn't even realize, because nobody even realizes until they actually see you away from that. But how tall are you?
Well, people are. I get comments a lot of like, "Is that a short scale bass?"
Yeah,
and they're like, "Nope, it's just a normal Fender Jazz." Yeah, I'm 6'7" or about 2 meters, and you can see I'm at my standing desk setup right now, and you can see a lot of the ceiling because I'm just like pointed upwards. Yeah, pretty huge.
Yeah, I thought, because everything made sense when I found that out. I can't remember how I found out. It was from some random video that I'd seen. I was like, man, yeah, it all makes sense now. That's why everything looks so small. Yeah. But Derek was the same when I first met him. I mean, he's not like super tall, but he was like quite a lot taller. I'm like 5. Well, I've lost 2 inches in height actually from playing. My back's bent, so I was 5'11". I'm down at 5'9.5" now. But when I met him, he was like taller than me, but on the videos, you only see him sort of scrunched up with his bass. Well, not scrunched up, but he
Totally.
sat playing.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, I don't know, you get this weird vision of what somebody's going to look like from watching them on the screen, especially on these videos. And then they're not like that at all when you meet them. You're like, oh, right. And Tony Gray, who I thought was going to be really tall, was actually shorter than me, which was...
Oh, interesting. He does seem like he'd be tall. Maybe he just has kind of like a lanky vibe.
Yeah,
and
he's got that long,
you think he'd be
rangy
like,
kind of look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he was shorter than me. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I mean, Scott's a little bit taller than me, but I'd be the same height if I'd not lost those 2 inches. That's 2 inches, man.
Fade to black.
So what's the yeah, fade to black? Yeah, so what's the future then for BassBuzz? Have you got more things coming out, or is it just keeping going as it is?
Yeah, I want to keep doing the YouTube videos. Obviously, I mean, it's just such a great time as bass teachers to like have this way to present, and I don't take for granted that it'll always be like this. Like, who knows what'll happen in the future of YouTube, and just how, I mean, it's gotten so much more saturated now than it was. Like, I feel like when you and I started doing bass lessons, there were not a lot of bass lesson channels, and now there's a lot of them, which is great. But yeah, I really feel grateful for this moment we have where there's an opportunity to put out videos and a lot of people want to watch them. So I want to keep doing that. I'd really love to do more courses in the future, but as people who took my course many years ago can tell you, I've been saying that for a long time. It's a lot
It's
goes
hard
into
work.
making
It
a
takes
course.
a lot of doing to do something that long. I know that I think my Simple Steps to Sight Reading, which is in like 3 volumes, that's about 30 hours in all together when you put them all together. But that's 3 volumes. But the average ones, I mean, some of them are like 20, 25. And I thought about it recently, because yours is over 30, isn't it? So I was thinking about how long that is in terms of video, and I was like, Lord of the Rings is 3 hours, and then all 3 of them together are 9. It's like in the Godfather trilogy, and then you think, hold on. It's like so much more than that, and it takes so long to do it.
I should add that to the sales page for Beginner to Badass. 3 times as long as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's so long. But, yeah, I mean, I think we were quite lucky in getting in there at the time that we all did. Because we've kind of there's no getting around it. We've all kind of got a bit of an advantage in terms of the YouTube thing because we've all got so much material, and I kind of feel sorry sometimes for people that are actually trying to get in there because there is so much stuff. Whatever keywords whatever search term you use, there's either going to be Scott, you, me, or maybe. Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. It's like us 3, just like doing everything. And it must be really hard to get in there now. So I think we were kind of lucky with that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's gotten more challenging and more nuanced or whatever to really like package stuff so that people want to click on it and watch it. It used to just be like beginner slap lesson number 1 by Josh Fossgreen, and people would be like, oh, I'll click on that. And now it's like, there's 5 Mr. Beast videos in the sidebar just like screaming at you. So it really has to. So it's been an art to figure out like, how do we play this packaging game and also not turn it into just like painful clickbait that you have trouble sleeping at night afterwards.
Yeah.
And I hope I've straddled the right side of the line with that, but sometimes people comment to the contrary.
Yeah, some people comment. They always do. Yeah. I mean, so what kind of playing are you doing these days? Are you just who are your fave bass players of the moment?
I mean, I've been a Tim Lefebvre fanboy for the last few years, pretty hard. Like since the Black Star, the last Bowie album, and the Mark Juliana stuff, and the Donnie McCaslin. Casting for Gravity record, and there's a new Donnie McCaslin coming out. So I'm always like Tim Lefebvre's at the tip of my awareness with fanboying these days. which is interesting because for me it used to be all about just like the major shred, like Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, Flea, Les Claypool, and obviously I still love that stuff and make videos about those guys and stuff. But yeah, it's the studio guys that I really salivate over, like Lee Sklar and Tim and yeah, people who can just like hear a song and come up with the brilliant bass line. Like that's what what really blows me away. Having done a decent amount of studio work over the years, I know how like hard that can be sometimes. And just, yeah, people who have that like right brain, just like it just appears to them, and they know all the right gear to bring and how to get the right tone and how to get all their quarter notes with the same waveform, and just like that little subtle detail stuff is what I really think is cool these days. Totally. Well, and I get so much feedback on my own playing from just like recording play-alongs for videos and looking at what I recorded on film day and stuff, and it's just so humbling now, like recording everything into digital audio workstations, and you can just see vertically like where the grid is and where your notes were horizontally. And you can also see like, okay, these notes were all supposed to be the same volume, but the first one is louder because I wasn't settled in yet. And so that's the kind of stuff that I get
we
excited
did an
about these
interview
days.
with Tony Levin. We did Lee Sklar as well, but Tony Levin, oh man, when he was talking about Sledgehammer and coming up with that, I was like, man, can you imagine just coming up with that? And there's like you know, especially with all the people around there. I mean, it'd be intimidating as it is, you know, just you're sat there with Peter Gabriel, and then all of a sudden you just pop up with that, you know. Those guys are amazing. So cool. All right then, Josh. I'll let you get moving, and it's been great to speak to you finally. You know,
yeah, it was too long
after all this time. So yeah, thanks very much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was really good to hang with you.